"Your daughter is too ugly to marry," they said to the queen, but a human mechanic proposed anyway. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the royal palace of Valerian, where crystalline towers stretched toward twin moons and craters draped themselves in garments worth more than starships, Queen Thera held her daughter's hand and felt her heart break. For the 1000th time, Princess Kayla stood beside her mother with the quiet dignity that had become her armor. Her scaled features set in an expression of practiced indifference as yet another diplomatic envoy politely declined the proposed alliance. The Torvan ambassador bowed low, his forearms sweeping in a gesture of regret that fooled no one. His words were carefully chosen, diplomatically wrapped, but their meaning cut like a blade. Cultural incompatibility, he called it, aesthetic differences too profound to overcome. The alliance would be politically sound, he admitted, but his prince required a consort whose appearance aligned with Torvan standards of beauty. He never said the word ugly. He didn't have to. Queen Thessera watched him leave, then turned to her daughter. Kayla's scales, which should have shimmered with the iridescent beauty typical of their species, were mottled and dull, a genetic anomaly that occurred in less than 1% of Valerian births. Her facial ridge was asymmetrical, her eyes set slightly too far apart by the exacting standards of the galactic court, where beauty was currency and appearance determined destiny. Princess Kayla was considered unmarriageable. "This isn't fair, Kayla," Thea said softly, squeezing her daughter's hand. Kayla smiled, and in that smile was a strength that made the Sarah's chest ache with pride and sorrow in equal measure. Life rarely is. "Mother, I've made peace with it," but the Sarah had not made peace with it. She had spent 20 cycles watching her brilliant, kind, wickedly funny daughter be rejected by suitors who never bothered to know her. Kayla spoke 7 languages fluently, could debate galactic law with the sharpest legal minds, played the resonance harp so beautifully it made grown warriors weep, and had a laugh that could light up entire rooms. None of it mattered. They saw her face and made their excuses. Royal Mechanics Bay hummed with activity as always, a controlled chaos of repairs and maintenance that kept the palace fleet operational. Logan Hayes wiped coolant from his hands and squinted at the thruster assembly he'd been rebuilding for the past 6 hours. The yacht belonged to some duchess or another. He'd stopped trying to keep track of the nobility. To him they were just names on work orders, vessels that needed fixing. "Hey Hayes, you about done with that?" his supervisor called from across the bay. "We've got the royal cruiser coming in for routine maintenance." Logan grunted acknowledgement and torqued down the final connection. The thruster assembly clicked into place with a satisfying sound that meant he'd done the job right. He'd been working in the palace Mechanics Bay for 3 standard years now, ever since his transport ship had broken down in Valerian space, and he'd fixed it using nothing but spare parts and what his grandfather called good old human ingenuity. The Queen's chief mechanic had been impressed enough to offer him a job on the spot. It was good work, steady pay, and the Valerians treated him fairly, better than fairly. If he was being honest, they were curious about humans, asked endless questions about Earth and the Terran systems, and seemed genuinely entertained by what they called his peculiar problem-solving methods. Logan just called it making do with what you had, a skill learned from growing up on a colony world where the nearest parts supplier was 3 weeks away by jump. He was cleaning his tools when he heard the commotion near the bay entrance, raised voices, the sharp tone of distress. Logan looked up to see a small group clustered around someone on the ground. Without thinking, he grabbed his emergency kit and jogged over. Move back, give her air, he said, pushing through the crowd. On the ground was a Valyrian woman, her breathing labored, her scales taking on the grayish tint. That meant oxygen deprivation. He recognized the signs immediately. Atmospheric incompatibility, probably a failed personal environment regulator. Someone get medical now, Logan barked, already pulling out a portable oxygen unit from his kit. He'd added it months ago after a similar incident with a visiting Aquarian dignitary. The Valyrian woman's eyes were unfocused. Panicked, hey, look at me, you're going to be fine. This is oxygen, it's going to help. He fitted the mask over her face, adjusting the flow. Within seconds, her breathing eased, color returning to her scales. The crowd around them had gone very quiet. Logan was too focused on his patient to notice. That's it, just breathe nice and slow, you're okay. The woman's eyes met his, and Logan saw intelligence there, and gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite identify. She was unusual looking even by Valyrian standards. Her scales were mottled rather than uniform, her features asymmetrical, Logan thought. It gave her character, made her face interesting in a way the cookie cutter perfection of the nobles sometimes lacked. The medical team arrived, a flurry of activity and professional competence. They took over, but not before the woman reached out and touched Logan's hand, a gesture of thanks. He nodded, gathering his equipment. Just another day in the palace, he thought. Save a life before lunch, rebuild an engine after. It wasn't until later, when his supervisor pulled him aside with an expression somewhere between awe and horror, that Logan learned the woman he'd saved was Princess Kayla, the Queen's only daughter. And it wasn't until 3 days later, when a royal summons arrived requesting his presence at a formal dinner, that Logan began to realize his life was about to get very complicated. The formal dinner turned out to be anything but Logan had expected, a massive banquet hall full of stuffy nobles, but instead he was ushered into a private dining room where Queen Thesira and Princess Kayla waited. The queen was imposing in the way that true power always is, her scales shimmering with the colors of deep space, her bearing regal but not cold. Kayla sat beside her mother, and when she saw Logan, she smiled. Mr. Hayes, the queen said, gesturing to his seat. Thank you for coming, please sit. I wanted to personally thank you for your quick thinking and action 3 days ago. You saved my daughter's life. Logan sat, feeling wildly out of place in his clean but simple work clothes. Just did what anyone would do, Your Majesty. Anyone did not, Kayla said, her voice warm with a hint of amusement. 17 people stood and watched. You were the only one who acted. The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. The queen asked about his work, about Earth, about what had brought him to Valyrian. Logan found himself relaxing, telling stories about growing up on a colony world, about learning mechanics from his grandfather, who could fix anything with duct tape, and sheer stubbornness. Kayla laughed at his stories, asked intelligent Questions challenged some of his assumptions about galactic politics in ways that made him think. He found himself watching her as she spoke. She was animated when she talked about things she cared about, her hands moving expressively, her eyes bright with passion. She had opinions about everything. It seemed strong opinions, backed by knowledge and wit. Logan liked that. He'd grown tired of people who agreed with everything just to be agreeable. As the evening wore on, Logan realized he was enjoying himself more than he had in months, maybe years. When it was time to leave, Kayla walked him to the door. "Thank you again," she said, "for saving my life, but also for this evening. It was nice to talk with someone who doesn't treat me like I might break." Logan looked at her, puzzled. "Why would anyone think you'd break? You seem pretty solid to me." Something shifted in Kayla's expression, a vulnerability quickly hidden. "You'd be surprised, Mr. Hayes." Over the following weeks, Logan found reasons to be parts of the palace where he might accidentally run into the princess. She found reasons to visit the mechanics bay. They talked about everything and nothing. She showed him the palace gardens, explained Valyrian history, taught him phrases in her language that made the other mechanics laugh. He showed her how to rebuild a motivator core, explained human music made her laugh with stories about the terrible decisions of his youth. Their friendship deepened with each passing day. Logan learned that Kayla had a photographic memory and could recite entire legal codes from memory. She learned that Logan had designed a new type of plasma flow regulator that could revolutionize ship propulsion, but had never submitted it because he didn't think anyone would listen to a mechanic. They spend hours in the palace library, Kayla reading ancient texts while Logan sketch designs, occasionally looking up to debate philosophy or argue about the best way to approach first contact protocols with newly discovered species. One afternoon, Kayla brought her resonance harp to the mechanics bay. Other workers stopped what they were doing to listen as she played, crystalline notes filling the vast space with haunting beauty. Logan watched her face as she played, saw the way she lost herself in the music, the way her usual guardedness melted away. When she finished, there was a moment of perfect silence before the mechanics erupted in applause. "That was incredible," Logan said. "Why don't you perform more often?" Kayla's expression shuddered slightly. "People don't come to hear me play, they come to gawk at the unusual. Princess, to whisper about how sad it is that someone so unpleasant to look at has such talent." After a while, I stopped giving them the opportunity. "Their loss," Logan said firmly. "That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard." Another time, Logan took Kayla to a street market in the city, far from the palace and its judging eyes. She wore a simple cloak with the hood up, and for a few precious hours, she was just another person browsing stalls of exotic foods and handmade crafts. Logan bought her a small carved figure of a mythical Valyrian creature, and she laughed with delight, tucking it into her pocket like a treasure. "I can't remember the last time I just walked around like this," she admitted. "Without guards, without protocol, without people staring. We should do it more often then," Logan said. "You deserve to have normal experiences." Normal, Kayla tested the word. "I'm not sure I'd know normal if it hit me in the face." "Well, I'm an expert in normal, aggressively normal even. I can teach you." They were sitting at a small cafe drinking something that tasted vaguely like coffee but with a sweet, floral aftertaste when Kayla asked him about Earth. Logan talked about the colony world where he'd grown up, about red dirt and endless skies, about his family's farm and the close-knit community that had raised him. He talked about leaving to see the galaxy, about the loneliness of being far from home, about finding his place in the universe. One repair job at a time. Do you miss it, Earth? She asked. Sometimes, but I think I miss the idea of home more than the actual place. Home is people, not locations. At least that's what my grandfather always said. Kayla smiled. Your grandfather sounds wise. He's a stubborn old coot who thinks duct tape can fix anything, Logan said fondly. But yeah, he's pretty wise when he wants to be. Logan didn't notice the stares at first, the way conversation stopped when they passed. He didn't see the scandalized expressions of Curters or the speculative looks from palace staff. He just saw Kayla, smart, funny, kind, who listened when he talked and shared her thoughts without pretense, who challenged him and made him laugh and slowly became the best part of his days. It was his supervisor who finally pulled him aside. Hayes, you're playing with fire. What are you talking about? The princess? You're spending a lot of time with her. Logan bristled. We're friends. Is that a problem? His supervisor sighed. Look, I like you. You do good work. You keep your head down, but you need to understand something. Princess, she's had a rough time. The whole galaxy knows it. There's not a noble family out there that hasn't rejected her as a potential match. The Queen's been trying to arrange a marriage for years, so don't give the girl false hope. You're a mechanic. Hayes, a human mechanic. Whatever you think is happening between you two, it can't go anywhere. The kindest thing you can do is keep your distance. Logan went home that night with his supervisor's words echoing in his head. He pulled up the galactic net, started reading. What he found made his blood boil. Articles about the unmarriageable princess, speculation about genetic defects, cruel commentary about her appearance, her worth, her future. There were posts from rejected suitors, some pitying, some mocking. One Torvin prince had called her the universe's cruelest joke, a princess with a peasant's face. He thought about Kayla, about her quick mind and quicker wit, about the way she lit up when talking about things she loved, about her kindness to everyone around her, regardless of their station. He thought about the quiet sadness he sometimes saw in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. The next day, Logan requested a formal audience with Queen Thessera. The Queen received him in her private study, a room lined with books and star charts. She looked tired, Logan thought, the kind of tired that came from carrying impossible burdens for too long. Mr. Hayes, she said, this is unexpected. Is something wrong with the fleet? No, Your Majesty, the fleet's fine. I'm here about something else, something personal. Thessar's expression grew guarded. Go on. Logan took a breath. I want your permission to court your daughter. The silence that followed was absolute. The Queen stared at him as if he'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Finally, she found her voice. You want to what? Court Princess Kayla formally, with the intention of marriage. If we suit. Thessera walked to the window. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate what you did for my daughter. I'm grateful for your friendship with her, but you don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. The Queen turned and Logan saw pain in Her eyes, my daughter has been rejected by every suitable match in this sector of the galaxy, princes, nobles, wealthy, merchants, all of them took one look at her and found reasons to decline. Do you know what that does to a person, to be told over and over that you're not good enough, not pretty enough, not worthy of love? Yes, Logan said quietly, I grew up on a colony world, Your Majesty. I'm the son of farmers. I've been told I'm not good enough my whole life. That's not what I see when I look at your daughter. What do you see? I see someone brilliant, who can argue galactic law better than most lawyers. I see someone who plays music that makes me feel things I don't have words for. I see someone who's kind to mechanics and gardeners and everyone the nobles ignore. I see someone who makes me laugh and makes me think and makes me want to be better than I am. She's not beautiful by galactic standards. Beauty standards are stupid, Logan said bluntly, begging your pardon, Your Majesty, but they are. Back on Earth, beauty standards change every generation. What's considered attractive in the Terran systems would be ugly in the Andromedan cluster, and vice versa. It's all made up, all arbitrary. What matters is what's here. He tapped his chest, and what's here. He tapped his head. Your daughter has both in abundance. You're human. Thus Sarah said the cultural differences alone would be enormous. The political implications of a princess marrying so far below her station would cause a scandal. Good, Logan said. Let them be scandalized. Let every noble who rejected her see that someone valued her enough to weather the scandal. Let them choke on it despite herself. The Sarah laughed. It was a short, sharp sound of surprise. You're serious completely? Why? Thera asked, and her voice held genuine curiosity. You could find a nice human woman. Settle down. Avoid all this complication. Why, Kayla? Logan thought about how to explain it. Because when I'm with her, I forget to be careful. I forget to be the quiet mechanic who keeps his head down. She makes me want to argue and laugh and take risks, because she's the first person in years who's made me feel like myself instead of just a role I'm playing. Because when she smiles at something I said, I feel like I won something precious. And if she rejects you, if she doesn't feel the same way, then at least she'll know someone thought she was worth asking, that someone saw her as desirable, as worthy, that someone looked at her and saw not a princess who couldn't find a match, but a woman worth fighting for. The Sierra studied him for a long moment. I can't give you permission, she said. Finally, Logan's heart sank, but not because I don't appreciate what you're offering. I can't give permission because this isn't my choice to make. It's Kai's. She's been denied agency in her own life for too long. If you want to court my daughter, Mr. Hayes, you need to ask her, not me. And if she says yes, then you'll have my blessing and my support. And fair warning that you're about to make some very powerful people very angry. Logan grinned. Good thing I'm just a mechanic then. Not much they can do to me that hasn't already been done. Logan found Kayla in the garden, sitting by the fountain that recycled water in an endless soothing loop. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her smile was warm. Logan, what brings you to the gardens? Shouldn't you be elbow deep in some engine? He sat beside her, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been even when facing the Queen. Kayla, I need to ask you something. She turned to face him fully, concerned, touching her features. Is everything all right? That depends on your answer. He took a breath. I know about the suitors About all of them, I know what they said, what they think. Kayla's expression closed off, that armor of practiced indifference sliding into place. I see, and you wanted to what? Offer your pity, assure me that I'm not as ugly as they say. No, Logan said firmly. I wanted to tell them they're all idiots, every single one of them. Kayla blinked. What, you're not ugly? Kayla, you're different. Yeah, your scales don't match the standard pattern. Your features aren't symmetrical, so. What, you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone whose eyes light up. When she talks about things she loves, I see someone who's kind even when the galaxy's been cruel to her. I see someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to think and makes every day more interesting just by being in it. Logan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to court you formally. I want to take you to dinners and gardens and anywhere else you want to go. I want to argue with you about politics and listen to you play music and hear all your opinions about everything. I want a chance to see if this thing between us could be something real. You're human, Kayla said, as if he might have forgotten. You're a mechanic. I'm a princess. The scandal alone would be enormous. I know. My mother's enemies would use it against her. They'd say she was so desperate to marry me off she allowed a union with someone so inappropriate. Probably you'd be mocked, scorned. They'd call you the human fool who took the princess no one wanted. Let them. Kayla stared at him. Why would you subject yourself to that? Because you're worth it, Logan said simply. Because every one of those so-called nobles was so busy looking at your face, they never bothered to see you, their loss. I'm not interested in being noble or appropriate or politically advantageous. I'm interested in you. Tears were sliding down Kayla's scaled cheeks. No one's ever said anything like that to me. Then everyone you've met has been a fool. Logan, I'm scared. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if you realize they were right, that I'm not worth the trouble? He took her hands in his. Then we figure it out like adults and part as friends. But Kayla, what if it does work? What if we could have something amazing and we never tried because we were too afraid of what might go wrong? She laughed, a watery sound that was half sob. When did you become wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a mechanic who knows a good thing when he sees it. So what do you say? Will you let me court you? Kayla looked at him, really looked at him, and Logan saw hope dawning in her eyes, hope and fear and possibility all tangled together. Yes, she said, yes. I'll let you court me. He grinned. Good. Because I already asked your mother, and she said it was your choice. But if you said yes, I'd have her blessing. So we're officially doing this, you asked my mother. Kayla's voice climbed an octave before asking me seemed polite. Plus, if she'd said absolutely not, I figured I'd need to know before making a fool of myself. Kayla laughed, really laughed, and pulled him into an embrace. You're impossible. Yeah, but you like me anyway. I really do. The news spread through the palace within hours. By the next day, it had reached the galactic court. By the end of the week, it was the scandal of the season. A human mechanic courting a princess. The princess everyone knew was unmarriageable. The commentary ranged from amused to outraged to bewildered. Logan ignored it all. He took Kayla to dinners at restaurants that served food from a dozen worlds. They walked through markets where vendors called out their wares in a cacophony of languages. He taught her to ride a hover bike, and she taught him traditional Valyrian dances. They argued about music and politics and the best way to repair a plasma conduit. 3 months into their courtship, the first formal challenge arrived. A to Torvin, noble the same whose prince had rejected Kaya years before, demanded an audience with Queen the Seera. He arrived with an entourage, clearly expecting to intimidate. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone dripping with false concern. "Surely you cannot approve of this farce, a human mechanic courting your daughter. It demeans your house, demeans the princess herself. We all understand. The situation is difficult, but this is not the solution." The Sarah's expression was icy. "The situation, as you call it, is none of your concern. My daughter is being courted by a worthy man. I see no issue." Worthy? The noble's voice rose. "He has no title, no wealth, no political connections. What could he possibly offer a princess? He offers her something none of your kind could," Thea said coldly. "Respect, love, the courtesy of seeing her as a person rather than a political chess piece to be evaluated and discarded. But your Majesty, the social implications, what the galactic court will think of this, it could damage your standing." "My standing will survive. As for the galactic court, they can think what they like. My daughter's happiness is worth more than their approval." The noble left in a huff, but he wasn't the last. A parade of dignitaries arrived, each with concerns about propriety, about tradition, about the sanctity of noble bloodlines. Thera turned them all away. In the mechanics bay, Logan faced his own challenges. Nobles who brought their ships in for service made cutting remarks about mechanics who didn't know their place. Logan fixed their ships perfectly and charged them double. 6 months in, at a state dinner that Kayla insisted Logan attend as her guest, a Centurion Duke made the mistake of commenting loudly about the princess's poor taste and companions. Logan heard Kayla's sharp intake of breath, saw her reach for that armor of indifference she wore when wounded. He stood, his chair scraping back. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Duke Renault, was it?" The Duke turned surprised. "Yes, I'm Logan Hayes. The poor taste and companions you were referring to. I wanted to introduce myself properly." The Duke's face flushed. "I meant no disrespect." "Sure you did," Logan said easily. "But here's the thing. I may be a mechanic. I may not have a title or a noble bloodline, but I know quality when I see it. Princess Kayla is brilliant, kind, talented, and patient enough to deal with people who judge her on the arrangement of her scales rather than the content of her character. So yeah, maybe her taste in companions is poor because she's willing to sit at a table with people like you who think it's acceptable to insult her in her own home." The silence was deafening. The Duke sputtered. Queen Thera was watching with poorly concealed amusement. Kayla was staring at Logan with an expression he couldn't quite read. Furthermore, Logan continued, warming to his topic, "I find it interesting that everyone in this room is so concerned about propriety and tradition and bloodlines, but not one of you seems to care about what actually makes a good partnership: mutual respect, shared interests, the ability to make each other laugh, the willingness to support each other through difficulties. By those measures, Kayla and I are doing pretty well. By your measures, well, your measures seem designed to make everyone miserable, so I'm comfortable ignoring them." He sat Back down, the dinner resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted after the meal. A surprising number of guests approached Logan privately, some to scold him for his rudeness, but others, younger nobles, mostly to thank him for saying what they'd been thinking. That was reckless, Kayla told him later. But she was smiling. You made an enemy tonight. I made several enemies, but I also made a point. No one gets to insult you in my hearing, not without consequences. My hero, she said, but there was no mockery in it, just warmth. A year into their courtship, Logan proposed, not at a fancy state dinner or during a royal celebration, but in the mechanics bay, where they'd first become friends. He'd built her something, a small device that looked like a music box but functioned on principles that combined human and Valiant technology. What is it? Kayla asked, turning it over in her hands. Open it, she did. Inside was a holographic display that showed them every moment they'd shared over the past year, walking through markets, laughing over dinner, dancing in the garden. The images cycled through, accompanied by music, a fusion of human and Valiant styles that Logan had spent months composing. Logan, this is beautiful. There's more. Watch. The final image was text, words in both their languages. Kayla, will you marry me? She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. Logan pulled out ring, human custom, he explained, and slipped it on her finger. It wasn't expensive, just a simple band he'd machined himself, but Kayla looked at it like it was made of starlight. The wedding was planned for 3 months later. The Queen wanted to give the galactic court time to adjust to the idea, time for the scandal to die down. It didn't. If anything, the announcement of an actual wedding made things worse. Delegations arrived to protest. Religious leaders claimed it violated sacred traditions. Noble families called it an insult to thousands of years of proper breeding protocols. Logan and Kayla ignored them all. They were too busy planning their life together, arguing over where to live, the palace or a house in the city, what kind of wedding to have, traditional Valyrian or something more mixed, whether to honeymoon on Earth so Kayla could meet Logan's family or on some neutral pleasure world. 2 weeks before the wedding, the most serious challenge yet arrived. A coalition of noble houses led by the same Torvan ambassador who had rejected Kayla years before demanded a formal audience with the Queen and her council. They claimed evidence that the marriage was inappropriate and should be forbidden. The council chamber was packed. Logan stood beside Kayla, holding her hand. Queen Thesira sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. The Torvan ambassador stepped forward. Your Majesty, honored council members, we come before you today with grave concerns about the proposed union between Princess Kayla and the human Logan Hayes. We have consulted with legal experts, cultural historians, and genetic specialists. The evidence is clear. This marriage should not proceed. On what grounds? Thesira asked, her voice dangerously quiet. On multiple grounds, Your Majesty. First, the genetic incompatibility. Humans and Valyrians cannot produce offspring. This marriage would end your direct bloodline. My daughter's ability to produce an heir has never been dependent on her marriage. Thus, Sarah said, there are other options as well. You know, the ambassador pressed on. Second, the cultural differences are too vast. Human lifespans, social customs, dietary Requirements all of these create insurmountable obstacles to a successful union. Insurmountable, Logan said. Unable to stay quiet is a strong word for challenges that millions of mixed species couples across the galaxy have overcome. You are not qualified to speak on this matter, the ambassador snapped. I'm qualified to speak on my own relationship. Thanks, the ambassador turned back to the Queen. Finally, and most importantly, there is the matter of station. Princess Kayla is royalty. Logan Hayes is a commoner and a human. Commoner at that. No offense intended to his species, but humans are relatively new to galactic society. They lack the sophisticated bloodlines, the genetic refinement, the cultural development of older races. This marriage would dilute the royal line with inferior genetics. The room erupted. Logan felt Kayla's hand tighten on his. He started to step forward, but the Sierra held up a hand for silence. Inferior genetics, she repeated, her voice like ice. Tell me, ambassador, by what measure do you judge genetic superiority? By the standards recognized throughout the galactic court lineage, genetic markers of intelligence and ability, absence of defects. I see, and my daughter with her unusual scale pattern and asymmetric features, where does she fall in these standards? The ambassador had the grace to look uncomfortable. That is a separate matter, Your Majesty, is it? It seems to me you're using the same flawed logic that labeled my brilliant daughter as unmarriageable, the same logic that values arbitrary physical markers over actual character, ability, and worth. Your Majesty, this is different. We're talking about the integrity of the royal bloodline. The integrity of the royal bloodline, the Sierra said, standing now, her voice ringing through the chamber. Will be just fine. My daughter is marrying a man who values her for who she is, who has defended her honor, who makes her happy. That man's genetics, his species, his social standing, none of that matters as much as the simple fact that he loves her and she loves him. But the traditions, the ambassador began. Traditions change, thus Sarah interrupted. They must, or they become chains that bind rather than guidelines that help. I have watched my daughter be rejected by dozens of suitors who were too blind to see her value. I have watched her suffer the cruelty of a society that judges worth by appearance and bloodline rather than character and deed. I will not watch her give up her chance at happiness because you and your coalition are uncomfortable with change. This is madness, another noble called out. You're letting personal sentiment override political wisdom. No, the Sarah said, I'm letting wisdom override political convenience. You want to talk about genetic superiority? Let's talk about it. Humans have been part of galactic society for less than 200 years, yet they've made contributions to science, art, engineering, and diplomacy that rival species with millennia of development. They adapt, they innovate, they find solutions to problems the rest of us consider impossible. That mechanic you all sneer at, he's improved the efficiency of our entire palace fleet by 18% using techniques none of our supposedly superior engineers ever considered. Logan blinked. He'd submitted those modifications through normal channels. Hadn't realized the Queen had been paying attention. Thier continued, but more than that, more than his skills or his species' achievement, Logan Hayes has done something none of your noble suitors could manage. He looked at my daughter and saw her not a princess to be evaluated for political advantage, not a genetic anomaly to be pitted or scorned, a person, a brilliant, accomplished, worthy person, and he valued her enough to face all of you, knowing you'd mock him and challenge him, and try to tear him down. That, members of this council, is the kind of character I want in my family. The chamber was silent. The Torvan ambassador tried once more. Your Majesty, we only seek to protect you from making a decision you'll regret. I appreciate your concern, the Sarah said, her voice softer now but no less firm. But the only thing I would regret is denying my daughter this chance at happiness. The wedding will proceed as planned. This council is dismissed. The nobles filed out, some angry, some thoughtful, some clearly confused by the turn of events. Logan and Kayla remained standing still, holding hands. Thank you, Mother, Kay said, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah smiled. Thank you for finding someone worth fighting for. The wedding day arrived with twin sunrise over Valerian, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The royal wedding venue, a massive garden amphitheater that could hold thousands, was filled to capacity. News crews from a dozen worlds had set up cameras. Half the galactic court had come, some to support the Union, others to witness what they considered a spectacular disaster in the making. Logan stood at the altar in a suit that blended human and Valerian formal wear, his heart pounding. His family had come from Earth, his mother crying happy tears, his grandfather grinning with pride. Friends from the Mechanics Bay filled several rows, cheering rowdily until the ceremony began. Then the music started and Cal appeared. She wore a gown that shimmered with embedded lights, traditional Valerian design modified to incorporate human elements. Her scales had been polished until they gleamed, and while they were still modeled and unusual by Valerian standards, Logan thought she'd never looked more beautiful. She walked down the aisle with her head high, her mother at her side, smiling at him with joy that made his breath catch. The ceremony was a fusion of traditions, human vows, and Valerian bonding rituals, promises spoken in both languages. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, a few nobles shifted in their seats, but none spoke. Years earlier, defense had made the consequences of objection clear. Logan slipped the second ring onto Kayla's finger, this one more elaborate, set with a stone from his home colony world. Kayla gave him a Valerian bonding bracelet, intricately carved with symbols representing their joined future. They spoke their vows, Logan's voice steady despite his nerves, Kayla's clear and strong. I promise to see you, Logan said, to value you, to stand beside you against whatever challenges come, to make you laugh and to listen when you need to talk, to be your partner in all things. I promise to trust you, Kayla said, to share my life with you honestly, to support your dreams and to build new dreams together, to love you, not despite our differences, but because of them, by the power vested in me by the Valerian crown and recognized by the Galactic Federation. The efficient declared, I pronounce you bonded partners, joined in marriage. They kissed to thunderous applause and more than a few tears as they walked back down the aisle together. Logan saw the expressions on the noble guests' faces. Some were genuinely happy for them, some looked uncomfortable but accepting. Few still showed disapproval. He didn't care. He had Kayla's hand in his her smile lighting up her face, their future stretching before them full of possibility. The reception was elaborate, food and drink from 100 worlds, music that blended styles from across the galaxy, dancing that went on for hours. Logan danced with his new wife, with his mother, with Queen Thera, who whispered, "Thank you for making my daughter so happy." Kayla danced with Logan's grandfather, who made her laugh with stories about Logan's childhood mishaps. Speeches were given. Logan's best friend from the mechanics bay told embarrassing stories about Logan's first days at the palace. Kayla's childhood tutor spoke about the brilliant student who had become a remarkable woman. Queen Thera raised a toast to new beginnings and the courage to challenge old assumptions. As the night wore on and the guests began to depart, Logan and Kayla slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Lights twinkled in the distance, ships moving through the sky, life continuing in all its chaotic beauty. "We did it," Kayla said, leaning against him. "We actually did it. Did you doubt we would?" "Maybe a little. There were moments when I thought the pressure would be too much, that you'd realize what you were taking on and change your mind." Logan turned her to face him. "Kayla, listen to me. I meant every word I said. You're worth it, all of it. Scandal, the challenges, the disapproval, you're worth it all. Even if we can't have children of our own. Even if my genetics really are flawed." "Genetics aren't flawed," Logan said firmly. "They're just different. And as for children, we'll figure that out if and when we want to. There are options. Adoption, genetic combination therapy. Or maybe we just fill our lives with other things that matter. We get to decide together." "Together," Kayla repeated. "I like the sound of that." Over the following months, Logan and Kayla settled into married life. They chose to live in a house in the city rather than the palace, wanting some independence, while still being close enough for Kayla to fulfill her royal duties. The house was modest by royal standards, but felt like a palace to Logan, with its garden, courtyard and walls made of the same crystalline material as the royal towers. Their first weeks together were an adventure and cultural compromise. Logan had to learn Valerian sleeping schedules, which ran on a 28-hour cycle rather than Earth's 24. Kayla had to adjust to human food preferences, though she discovered a surprising love for pizza, which Logan introduced her to at a human-owned restaurant in the diplomatic quarter. They argued playfully about everything from the proper temperature for living spaces to whether it was acceptable to work on mechanical projects in the living room. Cal won most arguments, but Logan claimed victory on the mechanical projects question after he promised to clean up thoroughly. Logan continued working in the palace mechanics bay, though he also started consulting on designs for other royal houses who had heard about his improvements. Word spread quickly through diplomatic channels that the human who had married Princess Kayla was also the genius behind the palace fleet's improved efficiency. Suddenly Logan found himself in demand as a consultant, fielding requests from nobles who had previously sneered at him. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Now they want my help," he told Kayla one evening. "Same people who said I wasn't good enough to court you are happy to pay me for my expertise." Kayla smiled. "Charge them triple. Call it a premium for short notice and previous rudeness." He did. No one complained. The money allowed them to fund several charitable projects that Kayla had been passionate about, including a scholarship program for students from low-income families and a medical clinic in the city's poorest district. The scandal of their marriage slowly died down, replaced by new gossip, new controversies, but the impact of what they'd done rippled outward in ways they hadn't anticipated. Logan started receiving messages from other humans in mixed species relationships thanking him for making their lives easier. Kayla heard from Valyrians who had felt excluded because of their appearance, who told her that seeing their princess happy had given them hope. One evening, a young Valyrian woman came to their door. She had scales that were even more mottled than Kayla's, and a facial structure that deviated significantly from the norm. She was trembling with nervousness but determined. "Your Highness," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. I've been engaged to a wonderful man for 2 years, but we kept it secret because his family would never approve. They think I'm ugly, that I would embarrass them. But after your wedding," he stood up to them. "He told them that if you and Mr. Hayes could weather the scandal, so could we. We're getting married next month." Kayla embraced the woman, tears in her eyes. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve every bit of happiness." After the woman left, Kayla turned to Logan. "We did that. We helped make that possible." "No," Logan corrected gently. "You did that by being brave enough to accept my courtship, by standing up in front of the galactic court and speaking your truth. I just asked a question. You changed the world." "We changed it together," Kayla insisted. "That's the whole point." Other mixed species couples, previously hiding their relationships or avoiding commitment due to social pressure, began coming forward. A human woman and a Centurion man announced their engagement, citing Logan and Kayla's example in their public statement. A Valyrian noble married a Terran diplomat in a ceremony that deliberately echoed elements of Logan and Kayla's wedding. Each new union was a small rebellion against centuries of rigid social structure. Each couple another crack in the wall of prejudice. A year after the wedding, Kayla was invited to speak at a galactic court session on social reform. She stood before the assembled nobles and spoke about the arbitrary nature of beauty standards, about the harm done by rigid social hierarchies, about the importance of valuing character over appearance or bloodline. Logan sat in the gallery watching his wife command the attention of beings who had once dismissed her without a second thought. "My husband is human," she said, "and I can hear some of you thinking that this diminishes me somehow, that I settled, that I couldn't do better, but I want you to understand something. Logan Hayes didn't marry me in spite of how I look. He didn't marry me because he pitied me, or because he couldn't find a more attractive partner. He married me because he values intelligence, kindness, humor, and shared interests over arbitrary physical markers. He married me because he took the time to actually know me." She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber, making eye contact with nobles who had rejected her, with diplomats who had whispered behind her back. "How many of you can say the same about your own partners? How many of you chose your mates based on genuine compatibility rather than political advantage or social expectation? How many of you are truly happy in your carefully arranged, genetically approved union?" The silence that followed was profound. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. A few looked thoughtful. One elderly centurion diplomat who had been married in an arranged union for 40 years stared at his hands, his expression unreadable. I'm not saying all arranged marriages are bad, Kayla continued. Some of them work wonderfully. Some people find genuine love and partnership in unions that began as political necessity, but a system that places more value on scale, symmetry than on character, more importance on bloodline than on compatibility, is a system that needs reform. We can honor tradition while also acknowledging that some traditions cause harm. She told her own story then, speaking with raw honesty about the years of rejection, about the psychological toll of being told repeatedly that she wasn't good enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't worthy of love. She talked about the suitors who had looked at her for 30 seconds and made their excuses about the comments she'd overheard, about the articles written discussing her unmarability, as if she were a problem to be solved rather than a person with feelings. I internalized it, she admitted. I started to believe them, started to think that maybe I really was defective, that maybe I didn't deserve love or partnership or happiness. And then this mechanic from Earth saved my life and didn't see any of the things everyone else saw. He just saw me and he thought I was worth pursuing. Her voice broke slightly and she took a moment to compose herself. Logan wanted to go to her to offer support, but he knew she needed to do this herself. This is what courage looks like, he thought. Standing in front of your critics and telling your truth. We need to change, Kayla said firmly, her voice strong again. Not just for me, not just for the handful of people who don't fit the standard molds, for everyone. Because this system that judges worth based on appearance and bloodline, it hurts us all. It forces people into unhappy marriages for the sake of political alliances. It elevates the mediocre because they were born to the right families. It dismisses the brilliant because they don't look the right way. And it teaches our children that their value is determined by factors beyond their control rather than by who they choose to be. The speech became famous, quoted in news reports across the galaxy, dissected and debated in universities and diplomatic circles. Some praised her courage and honesty. Others called her naive, said she was trying to tear down thousands of years of tradition because of personal grievance. But the conversation had started and it wasn't stopping. Young nobles began questioning their arranged engagements. Parents started considering compatibility alongside political advantage. Schools added discussions of social justice and arbitrary beauty standards to their curricula. It wasn't a revolution, not yet, but it was change, slow and stubborn and inexorable. It didn't change everything overnight. Social systems that had existed for millennia weren't going to transform immediately, but it started. Conversations challenged assumptions, gave voice to those who had been questioning the status quo. 2 years into their marriage, Logan and Kayla decided to adopt. The decision came after visiting a refugee camp on the outskirts of the city where displaced children from various conflicts waited in limbo for futures that might never come. Not a Valyrian child or a human child, but an orphan who needed them most, regardless of species. They met Mira on a gray afternoon when the rain fell in sheets outside the camp administrator's office. She was 5 years old, a member of a species whose home world had been destroyed in a territorial war between Two larger powers, her people had been collateral damaged, their planet rendered uninhabitable, their population scattered across refugee camps. Throughout the sector, Mira was one of only a few dozen children of her species known to have survived. She sat in the corner of the common room, clutching a worn stuffed animal that had seen better days, her large eyes watchful and weary while other children played or cried or clung to caretakers. Mira simply watched as if she'd learned that drawing attention was dangerous. Kayla knelt beside her, moving slowly. Carefully, "Hello," she said softly. "My name is Kayla. What's yours?" Mira didn't answer at first, then so quietly Logan almost missed it, she said. "Mira, but nobody wants me. I heard the workers talking. They said I'm too sad, too damaged, that I'll never adjust." Kayla's eyes filled with tears. "I know how that feels. People said things about me too, that I was too different, too unusual, that no one would want me." Mira looked up, really looked at Kayla for the first time. "But you're a princess." "I am, and I was also told I was too ugly to marry, that I'd never find anyone who would choose me. But this man here," Kayla gestured to Logan, "he chose me anyway. He saw past what others called ugly and found me beautiful. Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Mira shook her head. "I see someone strong, someone who survived something terrible, someone who's scared, but still brave enough to keep going. I see someone who deserves a family, who will love her exactly as she is." Logan knelt beside Kayla. "We'd like to be that family if you'll have us. You don't have to decide right now. We can visit, get to know each other. But Mira, I want you to know something. You're not too anything. You're exactly right, just as you are." Mira looked between them, disbelief and hope wearing on her small face. "You really want me, even though I'm not Valyrian or human, even though I have bad dreams and sometimes I can't stop crying, especially then," Kayla said firmly. "Family isn't about being the same species or being perfect. It's about loving each other through the hard times and celebrating the good ones." Adoption process took 3 months of paperwork, interviews, and legal proceedings. Some officials questioned whether a cross-species adoption was appropriate, whether Mira wouldn't be better served by being placed with a family of her own kind, if any could be found. Logan and Kayla fought every objection, hired the best lawyers, made it clear that Mira was their daughter in every way that mattered. When the final approval came through, they brought Mira home to a room they'd spent weeks preparing. It had walls painted with stars from her lost home world, researched painstakingly from surviving astronomical records. It had books in her native language, toys that reflected her culture, and a small garden plot in the courtyard where she could grow the flowers that had once bloomed on her planet. Mira stood in the doorway, looking at it all with wide eyes. "This is for me," she whispered. "All yours," Logan confirmed. "Your room, your home, your family." That night, Mira had the first of many nightmares, screaming herself awake with memories of the attack that had destroyed her world. Kayla held her while she cried, rocking her gently, singing a Valyrian lullaby. Logan sat beside them, his hand on Myra's back, a steady presence. "We're here," Kayla whispered. "You're safe. We're not going anywhere." Watching Kayla with Mira, Logan fell in love with his wife all over again. She was patient when Mira had nightmares, sitting up through long nights without complaint. She was creative in finding ways to make the child smile, learning games from Myra's culture, incorporating her traditions into their family life. She was fierce in protecting her from anyone who suggested that adopting outside their species was inappropriate, shutting down criticism with a look that could freeze stars. Mira thrived. Within months, the scared little girl became a curious, talkative child who followed Logan around the workshop, asking endless questions about how things worked and why. She climbed into Kayla's lap during story time, her small arms wrapped around her mama's neck, trusting in a way she hadn't trusted anyone since losing her birth family. She started calling them Mama and Papa, words that made both Logan and Kayla's eyes water with joy every single time. 3 years in, Logan was offered a position as chief engineer for the Royal Fleet. It came with a title, minor nobility by marriage, having its privileges, which Logan found hilariously ironic. The mechanics bay threw him a party, teasing him about becoming one of the fancy people he used to mock. I'm still the same person, Logan insisted, just with more responsibility and slightly nicer clothes. You're wearing a ceremonial sash, his former supervisor pointed out. You've definitely changed. The sash is Kayla's fault. She says I need to look the part. The party lasted well into the night, friends and colleagues celebrating his success, but the moment Logan treasured most came later when he got home to find Kayla and Mira asleep on the couch, a storybook opened across Kayla's lap. He covered them with a blanket, kissed them both gently, and sat watching them sleep, overwhelmed by gratitude for the life they'd built. 5 years into their marriage, Queen Thessera announced her intention to step down from the throne. She was tired, she said, ready to retire and let the younger generation lead. In a move that surprised many, she named Kayla as her heir. The galactic court erupted once again, a queen with asymmetric scales and a human consort. It was unprecedented, scandalous, inappropriate. Delegations arrived to protest. The same old arguments were trotted out about genetic purity and traditional standards. Kayla stood before the court, Logan at her side, and addressed their concerns with the same directness her mother had shown. I understand your hesitation, she said. I don't fit your image of what a queen should look like. I married outside not just my species but my social class. I've adopted a child of yet another species. By your traditional standards, I'm completely inappropriate for the throne. She paused, her gaze sweeping the assembly. But here's what I offer you, a queen who understands what it means to be judged unfairly, who knows the pain of being dismissed for things beyond her control, who has learned through hard experience the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to see true worth, a queen who will govern not based on arbitrary hierarchies but on merit, compassion, and justice. Furthermore, she continued, you're worried about my human consort being inappropriate. Logan Hayes has served this palace and this planet with distinction for 8 years. He's improved our technology, defended my honor, helped raise a child who had lost everything, and shown more true nobility in his actions than many who were born to the title. If anything, having him at my side makes me a better ruler. The debate raged for weeks. In the end, it was the people who decided, not the nobles with their concerns about propriety, but the ordinary citizens of Valerian who had watched Kayla and Logan's relationship unfold, who had seen them adopt Mira, who had heard Kayla's speeches about social reform and fairness, petitions poured in supporting Kayla's ascension to the throne. Street demonstrations organized by citizens, carrying signs that read, "We want Queen Kayla and love matters more than bloodlines," filled the capital. The pressure from the populace was impossible to ignore. 6 months later, Kayla was crowned Queen of Valerian in a ceremony that blended tradition with reform. Logan stood beside her not as Prince Consort, he'd refused that title, but as her partner and chief advisor. Mira, now 8 years old, watched with wide eyes as her mama became queen. The first thing Queen Kayla did was reform the marriage laws, making it illegal to discriminate based on species, appearance, or social class. The second was to establish a merit-based system for royal appointments, replacing hereditary positions with selections based on ability. The third was to fund programs supporting orphans and refugees, ensuring no child would grow up without opportunities because of their background. There was resistance. Of course, some noble families were outraged by the changes. A few tried to organize opposition to undermine Kayla's authority, but the queen had learned from her mother's example and from her own experiences. She was firm where she needed to be, compassionate where she could be, and always willing to listen to genuine concerns while rejecting bad faith arguments. Logan supported her through all of it, offering perspective when she was frustrated, humor when she was overwhelmed, and unwavering belief in her capabilities. He still worked on engines when he needed to clear his head, still got grease under his fingernails, still preferred the company of mechanics to nobles. 10 years into their marriage, on the anniversary of their wedding, Logan and Kayla returned to the garden where he proposed. Mira was with the Sierra, giving them a rare evening alone. They sat by the fountain, older now with the lines and marks of a decade of challenges and joys, but still fundamentally the same people who had fallen in love over repair manuals and philosophical debates. "Do you ever regret it?" Logan asked. "The scandal, the fights, taking on someone so inappropriate?" Kayla laughed. "Every single day." His face fell until he saw her expression. She was grinning. "I'm kidding, you idiot. No, I don't regret it. This life we've built, it's better than anything I imagined back when I was the unmarriageable princess everyone pitted. I never pitted you, I know. That's why I fell in love with you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water cycle through the fountain, listening to the sounds of the city. The distance, somewhere out there, couples were falling in love across species barriers, social classes, traditional expectations. Somewhere, children who looked different were growing up knowing that their worth wasn't determined by their appearance. Somewhere the galaxy was slowly, stubbornly becoming a little bit better. "Did you ever think," Kayla said, "eventually, when you were a mechanic, fixing ships and keeping your head down, that you'd end up married to a queen?" "Honestly, no. I thought I'd fix engines until I retired, maybe get a little house somewhere quiet, grow old working on vintage ships for fun." "Would you have been happy?" Logan considered. "Maybe in a small way, but nothing like this. This is better than I knew to dream, even with all the politics and the nobles who still think you're inappropriate." "Especially with that," Logan said. "Watching you prove them wrong never gets old, they stayed in the garden until the twin moons rose, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future, remembering the past. When they finally headed home, they walked hand in hand, a mechanic and a queen, partners in every sense that mattered. The story of the princess everyone called too ugly to marry and the human mechanic who proposed anyway became legend. It was told in schools as an example of challenging unjust standards. It was referenced in political debates about social reform. It was whispered by young people considering unconventional relationships, proof that love could overcome prejudice. But for Logan and Kayla, it was just their life. Complicated, challenging, beautiful, and entirely their own. They built something real from the ruins of other people's expectations, created a family from love rather than genetics, changed a society by simply refusing to accept its limitations. Years later, when Mira asked her papa why he'd chosen to marry her mama when everyone said it was a bad idea, Logan's answer was simple: because some things are worth fighting for. He said your mama was worth it then, and she's worth it now, and she'll be worth it every day for the rest of my life. And if people think you made a mistake, Mira pressed. Logan smiled. Then they don't understand what actually matters. Your mama is brilliant, kind, strong, and funny. She's an amazing queen, a wonderful mother, and my best friend. If people can't see that because they're too busy looking at the arrangement of her scales, that's their problem, not mine. Mira thought about this. So you're saying I should judge people by who they are, not what they look like or where they come from? Exactly, even if everyone else thinks differently. Especially then, someone has to have the courage to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Might as well be you. Mira grinned, an expression that reminded Logan of Kayla. Okay, Papa, I can do that. And she did, raised by a mechanic turned advisor and a queen who'd overcome prejudice. Mira grew up believing that worth was determined by character, that love mattered more than status, and that courage sometimes meant standing alone against the crowd. 20 years after Logan first proposed in a mechanic's bay, after a lifetime of proving the doubters wrong, he and Kayla sat together watching the sunset. Their hair was graying now, Logan's beard shot through with silver, Kayla's scales having dimmed slightly with age. Mira was grown, working as a diplomat, carrying their lessons into the wider galaxy. Was it worth it? Kayla asked, echoing their conversation from years before. All the fights, all the challenges. Logan didn't hesitate every second, even the Duke, who still sends passive-aggressive letters about our inappropriate union, especially him. His letters are hilarious. Kayla laughed, the sound as bright and joyful as it had been 2 decades before. I love you, Logan. Hayes, I love you too, Kayla. Hayes, and I propose to you all over again. Scandal and all, the galaxy had changed in the years since a human mechanic had looked at a princess everyone else rejected and seen someone worth fighting for. Not completely, not everywhere, but enough that mixed species marriages were common now. Enough that social mobility based on merit rather than birth was spreading. Enough that beauty standards were being questioned, challenged, slowly reformed. It wasn't perfect, change never was, but it was better, and that was worth everything. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in The comments, whether positive or negative, your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one, and I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next.